Two Ordinary Cops. We're back again. It's Damo here, and this is Schultzy. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. I'm going really well, mate. How's your life down there? Apparently, you had a few hailstorms and all that to keep you entertained.
Yeah, mate. 5 hailstorms in 2 days we've had. It's been pretty good. Nothing too out there. I think we had quarter golf ball size at one point, which I was starting to get worried about. But there's no damage to the car. Not that my old Ute matters that much, but yeah, no, we're pretty right. No damage. It's good for the good fertilizer for the grass. So the cows will get fat, mate. I'm happy.
Oh well, that's good. Yeah, no, that's excellent, mate. I think we've got a bit going on for this show. So, mate, what we're going to do is we're going to roll into some shout outs first. Because we've had a few people contact us, and then the last one will then roll into what we're going to talk about this episode. So, mate,
Sounds
I'm
good.
probably going to. Sorry, mate. Go.
No, I just said sounds good.
Yeah, all right. So, mate, first of all, I'm just going to give a shout out. So, one thing I'm trying to line up, and I have mentioned this before, I've got my uncle on my mum's side. Well, David Kitchen, we call him, but Bill Kitchen. He he's actually 88 this year. And he was a cop in Queensland in the 50s and 60s. So we're lining him up to actually come on the show and actually give us a bit of insight what the police force was like all the way back then. I'm not sure whether I mentioned it before, but that was in a time that when he got married, he had to get permission from the commissioner before he actually got married.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah.
yeah. So, and he's got some great stories. I had a chance to catch up with him about 6 months ago, and he told me a few, and yeah, I mean, like most cops, mate, they've just got so many stories. But I think it'd be really good to hear, from a time long gone. So we'll definitely get him on. But mate, also I'm going to give a shout out. So his grandson, Will, he's just gone up in Arakoon, and he's policing up there. So he's joined the police force. And mate, I'm just going to give a shout out because what we've spoken about and a lot, and you and I both did it. We went bush early on in our careers, and that's what he's doing. He's going to some of these remote places and really learning about the job. I had a good chat with him. I've met him actually the first time. What about I don't know 6 weeks ago, and awesome. Just having a chat. He's such a young, but he's so young, but he's switched on. He's got the right idea. He's got his a good mindset. So, mate, all the best, and you'll do well out there. So that's
Yeah,
just
definitely. Arakoon, I think you said. Was that right?
yeah, mate. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll keep you moving. Yeah.
keep you interested anyway.
Oh yeah.
Um,
No, that'll be right. No, and that's the thing. And the advice to all the youngins going out bush. Yeah, get to know your communities. Hey, get right in there, get involved in the community as best you can. But then remember, on those nighttime call outs, keep your wits about you.
yep. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Very good advice. Mate, I'm just going to. So we also got a comment on YouTube on about Coley Anderson's episode when she was on, and yeah, basically whoever's calls himself Parabloke, so not really sure about the name, but good episode, and he said she is one of the most genuine people you ever meet, and I couldn't agree more. So
Oh
just
yeah,
a shout out,
definitely.
mate. Thanks for he obviously listens to it on YouTube, I'd say. Um, and we are on basically just about every platform, I think.
Yep.
So yeah, so that's pretty good, mate. And then now we're gonna move on to just something. It was on the thin blue line quite a bit, and I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but there was a cop in Queensland or in Brisbane actually. He got shot in the leg. It was a bit of an altercation with this guy who managed to get a gun off him and shoot the cop in the leg. But it's the story is more about the Connie who was there with him had bought his own tourniquet, and the information coming out, and this is from the media, so it's not from the horse's mouth, but apparently they reckon that because that young Connie actually had a tourniquet on his vest at the time, that's what saved his life. If he had to go back to the car and grab one, it possibly would have bled out in that time. So I think, and there's been a bit of talk on the thin blue line. Actually, I think I read a comment somewhere, Nathan Finnan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your name was mentioned. It was sent through to you. But I could be wrong there. But I think there's a lot of talk on Thin Blue Line about the police forces actually getting them for their members to carry on them. Mate, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah. So tourniquets are. I mean, I've been involved not with police officers, but I've been involved in a lot of situations where we've not a lot, a few situations where we have applied tourniquets to members of the public for certain reasons, mostly car crashes and a couple of stabbings, and I've just helped the ambos do that. Um, they they're obviously a critical thing. They just immediately stop that massive bleeding. I know during the Afghanistan deployments, a lot of American, especially special forces, basically had them positioned already on them. So on each limb, they had a tourniquet sitting there ready to go. And
Yep.
basically, the second that there was an issue, they could just twist that tourniquet on and away they'd go. So they're obviously they've saved a hell of a lot of lives over the years. We definitely carried them in City Safe. We had that advanced first aid kit in that four up van that we used to roll around in.
Yep.
But we were kind of a special. We weren't a specialist role, but we were a little bit out of the normal. We were basically assisting GDs, and our primary role was those entertainment precincts, like I've spoken about before. So we had them there. I think we had one or two in that kit. Um, but yeah, I mean, the fact is the prevalence of knives. Um, it's certainly not a bad idea. I
Yep.
mean, we carry a fair bit anyway, but having it there, I mean, it's only a small thing. It weighs a few grams. You could easily fit it in a pocket. The biggest thing with things like that is you have your own on you, and it needs to be in a standardized place so that everyone knows where they are. It would be a thing that is trained. I know the Americans all carry American police officers, and if there's any guys from the US listening, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know it's very common in the US to have tourniquets on you, ready to roll. Um,
Yep.
Mate, they definitely. I mean, time is of the essence with an arterial bleed like that. I obviously know nothing about the situation that happened in Brisbane. All I know is what I've seen in the media, and I take that with a grain of salt. Um, so I mean, obviously, yeah, it was obviously a critical incident. Somehow the crooks got hold of the firearm. Firearm's gone off through his leg, and then the offender himself's been shot. So it would have been a hell of a show. But yeah, no, talking about tourniquets, mate, they are brilliant, and I knew a lot of guys who did wear their own anyway. So um, yeah, no, my opinion is anything that's going to increase members' safety is a good idea to me. So that's my
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, definitely. And there's a number of different types. It was, funnily enough, one of my best friends from school. He actually, well, his dad started up out for first aid, and I was having a chat to him just on Wednesday, in fact. And I was because he was talking about it as well. And he's actually got. I think there's a couple of cops that contacted him, and so they're buying it through him. And he said there's a number of different types. You got the ratchet and you got the twist ones and all that sort of thing, and some are better than others. But yeah, I think it's definitely something we need to actually look into. And like I said to Brent Messer is his name, and I said to him, I said, mate, I said if it saves one life, it's well worth the expense. So and look, it doesn't, it's not only for police officers. Like you said, I think you said that it was done for that one that fell off the roof and cut his arm
Yeah.
in Creek. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we put a tourniquet on him. That was the old twist one, the twist and lock off. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
So,
bastard would have hurt like hell. Geez, they're not. I reckon they'd hurt like buggery the way he was coiling. But yeah,
yeah, well, what's the choice though? A lot of
well, it's
pain
that
when
or
you,
you're dead. So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, mate. So yeah, look, I think definitely worthwhile, and it was funnily enough. I mean, it was mentioned to me. I cannot remember the cop that actually mentioned, but he was the one that suggested a few months ago that we put on there that that especially cops should think about carrying them, like purchasing one as he always does. So it's probably just a good reminder for people to it's better to need it to not need it. Better to have it not need it than to need it not have it.
yep,
So,
definitely.
so
Yeah. What
mate.
else you got, mate?
Well,
Yeah,
mate, we've actually, funnily enough, we got so a Mark Nash, ex copper, I believe.
ex Vic
Um,
Paul.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, yeah. So he's actually sent through so a bit of a funny one. He sent through a message. He's got his own story. Similar to the VB can, mate. And he
Oh,
sent
the
through.
infamous VB can from the
Anyway,
cells.
they they had a she was mentally challenged, this woman, and anyway, she was in the watch house, and they couldn't actually handle her in the watch house, so they basically moved her across to the prison. But she was naked because obviously, I mean, we've had that at times where you have to, or they strip themselves naked and just go absolutely nuts and try and hang themselves. I've had a woman try to hang herself in her underwear before, and in the cells. So, and this happened. So all she's got is this blanket, and they've moved her basically from the watch house to the prison. Anyway, and she's in the cell in the prison. Anyway, the guy, actually the head warden or whatever, says, well, she's not getting anything to eat until she calms down, and all that sort of thing. And then they look on the video screen, and she's eating a chicken drumstick. And it wasn't until that what the young Connie actually turned around and said, "Chicken drumsticks. That's what they had for lunch at the watch house."
Oh,
That they
dearie me.
realised
It had been stashed.
it had been stashed, mate. And
Oh,
Mark reckons he couldn't eat chicken drumsticks after that.
yeah. So those not playing along, where do you reckon she stashed it? Ugh. Yeah.
Oh dear, I don't know what's worse, mate. That's probably worse than the VB can, I think.
That's way worse. Oh, that's gross. Oh man.
But
Oh, I miss the old days, mate. Yeah.
Um, so, mate, also we'll give Mark a shout out. He's also sent through. He's set up in Victoria, and he's called it the Blue Green Crew. So it's for emergency services staff and defence. And he's got a bit of it's an old dairy, and it's outback Victoria, and he's set it up. For people suffering with PTSD from emergency services and defence, where they can actually go and stay for free. It looks like a beautiful spot. I'll actually put a link to it up on our socials, our Two Ordinary Cops Facebook page, so you can actually have a look and see what it's about. I think that's an excellent idea. It's really good to know that a lot of we're all here to support everybody, and I think it's a really good thing that he's done. And we'll hopefully, mate, we'll have a chat with him and get some more information. But I've take my hat off to him. I think that's excellent, and hopefully we can talk more about that in the future. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea, mate. That's we might even have a chat to Mark and just see what his thoughts are, because that's a really good idea. He's obviously just got this place that's available. He's caring enough to let other people know, so that's really good. Letting other people go out there and just take their mind off everything and relax out in the bush. You can't beat it. So
Yep.
yeah, well done.
Yeah. Well, mate, and then we're going to move on. So we got a message. I think it was last night or the night before. Hyun Lei. I hope I pronounced that right. And she's basically put out our thoughts on a 37-year-old, 5 foot tall female joining the NT police. Mate, we're going to roll. This is going to make us roll into something else, but I'm going to let you kick this off and put your thoughts in first, mate.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're going to be 37-year-old, 5 foot tall, join the police force, join the club. There's plenty of them. It's
Yeah.
there's no drama. We've got accoutrements. There's use of force options. You're not working by yourself. Everyone works to their strengths. Your strengths may not be lifting 300 kilos of people out of whatever. That's not the point. You're going to have other strengths as well. I, I wouldn't restrict anyone to anything, but you might not be right in there in a riot, grabbing people and tackling to the ground using body strength. That's fine. There's plenty of jobs in the police force that suit everyone's body type. It's not so much about that anymore. Um, yeah. Moving on, I think we're going to talk about we're talking about assaults on police, really, aren't we? We're going to roll into that a bit,
Well, yeah,
and the
mate, but
parity disparity. Yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, that's it. Yeah,
So
exactly, mate.
your use of force options elevate. So if I'm 5'11" or 5'10", 5'11", roughly there. I like to claim 6 foot, but I'm kidding myself. Um, so and I'm 105 kilos, and I can handle myself. I've been around for a long time, so I would back myself physically in a lot of things, but obviously sensibly. You don't just go running up. The other thing is physicality is the last resort. Like you kind of want to have resolved it by then, but that doesn't happen all the time. You do use physical force quite a bit. Um, the fact is that I can use minimal force just using strength, and I can restrain a vast majority of people. Um, Obviously not. There's a lot of big, strong blokes out there. If they're carrying on, well, you've got team. You've got other people with you. They'll get in there, and a lot of people. I love this conversation where people go, "Oh, why'd it take 8 cops to get him down?" It's like, well, that's minimal force because that's 8 coppers just holding one limb, holding the other limb. If it's one on one, that cop is going to escalate that force like you wouldn't believe. They're going to use weapons. They're going to inflict injury to resolve the situation by themselves. So using lots more numbers allows you to resolve one person, one subject carrying on with a much lower use of force. It doesn't look great, but use of force never does.
No.
Hollywood has not helped us there one bit. I don't know any ninjas in the police force. So it's that whole thing where you need to use the level of force that you have, use the resources you have to resolve it with minimal force. Um, so the thing we're talking about parity and disparity, and basically what that means is the fairness of the fight, for want of a better term. So as a 5 foot tall, 37-year-old woman, if you were one up against a 6 foot 4, 120 kilogram muscle man, straight away, if you get physically grabbed or touched or you get into an actual contact physical altercation with that person, you're going to lose. Simple as that. He's just going to fold you in half and you're going to lose. And I don't care what anyone says. I've been doing this. You've been doing this. Anyone who's in the know knows that a very strong person grabs hold of you. You can't do a damn thing. But you have accoutrements. You have weapons. And those weapons, and there's less lethal, and then there's lethal weapons that we carry: pepper spray, baton, the taser, options like that. The other thing is an excellent weapon that's used a lot out in remote areas in the Northern Territory is tactical disengagement. Get out of there, pull back, live to fight another day. There's plenty of time to catch him. You don't have to catch him right now.
Yep.
We're not interested in people getting hurt. And I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you're getting a big blue, he's probably going to get away anyway, and you're going to be injured. So, and then obviously the last resort is we do have a firearm. So you can escalate your use of force higher when there is a disparity between the two combatants. And I think that's what's misunderstood a little bit. And it's explained in court quite a lot, especially even outside the police, where you've got people who've used a higher level of force that someone's, well, you can't just go, hitting people with planks of wood or metal bars or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but he was being attacked by 3 people. So he's armed himself to increase the parity disparity. And that's where it's a leveling of the use of force, where basically you're trying to defend yourself. You can escalate what you would use against that person if you believe that death or serious harm or even harm to yourself is going
Yep.
to eventuate. So that's the whole discussion around parity, disparity. What are your thoughts on that?
Mate, yeah, you're exactly right. And look, we've got a number of cases. I mean, we mentioned Katie McKean. She was a small stature. I'm not sure about her height. I won't discuss that anyway. But she handled herself really well, and she knew when to engage and when not to. But like say her and myself, she could step up her level of force quicker than what I could. And that's exactly what you're explaining. You've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that. It's also important, mate. You're so right about that tactical disengagement. You, if you're in any danger whatsoever, live to fight another day. Come back. But I mean, we've got an army of police officers. You come back when you've got the force. The trick is in the police. You never lose a fight. So
No,
you've just
and
got to be. Sorry, mate.
it's a common. No, you're right. It's a common misconception as well. Well, that wasn't fair. It's not meant to be fair. Like,
No.
we're not here to fight fair. We're here to win, because the whole idea of police is that you are the society saying that behaviour is unacceptable and you're not going to do that, and we're going to apprehend you. Now we're human
Yep.
beings as well, and a human being on a human being, that's you're going to fight that person. Now, back in the old days, before we had lots and lots of accoutrements, there were a lot of assaults where police were knocked out, and we've heard all that thing. There was a few differences in society. There was a bit more respect. There's a reason why we carry a lot more weapons these days than we ever used to.
Yep.
But I mean, obviously, police still got killed and police still got hurt all the time. Um,
Yep.
yeah, the fact there is that we are not. It's not like, oh, will you get to fair fight the cop? No, you don't get to fair fight the cop. The police officer is going to apprehend you and take you into custody. If you resist, you're just committing a further offence.
Yep.
And if you assault the police officer, obviously there's further offences there. But at the end of the day, you're still going to be taken into custody.
Yep.
Now, that act of taking you into custody may require an escalation in force to the point where we do beat you. Like, that's how it's going to end. You're never going to win. This is
Yep.
what society doesn't really understand. It's like, well, that wasn't fair. It's not meant to be fair. We're
No.
meant to win, but we resolve it by, we've got a lot of assets and well, sometimes not out in the bush. But what you can do then is you can de-escalate an immediate situation and wait till the situation's calmed down and then reapprehend. And we've mentioned this in bush policing, where can you imagine the level of force required to apprehend an Aboriginal man out in the middle of a community who's going absolutely ballistic, drunk and potentially on drugs, driving a motor vehicle, middle of the night, absolutely out of control. And if you just go away, he can go out in the bush and carry on as much as he likes, and there's no harm. He's got to go to bed at some point. His offences don't go away.
Yep.
So pull back. Instead of all that confrontation and crashing motor vehicles and potentially him arming himself with weapons and you pulling firearms and all the issues that come after a situation like that, pull back, let him burn off all his steam, blow off all his steam. He's going to go to bed, find out where he sleeps, come back at 6 o'clock in the morning when he's passed out, hung over, and wake him up by the clack clack of handcuffs to his rear. And that's done. You've still
Yep.
apprehended the offender. I'm not talking about a situation where there are victims actively being hurt. Like, that's different. That's that active offender. It went from the old active shooter to active armed offender or active offender, basically. If you've got someone who is actually deliberately targeting people and they're continually doing that, you don't step back and let that happen. You have to raise that level of force right up to control the situation.
Yep.
But if they're just committing lots of offences and the only confrontation is going to be you against him, then don't. Harm
Yeah.
minimise, pull back. So yeah, there's plenty of ways to work that parity, disparity, and a lot of it has to do with just pulling back. Remember, we're the police. We're not there. We're not superheroes. We're not there to fight every single person, all the time. It's the whole idea is that you harm minimize and resolve the situation as peacefully as possible. So there is
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that tactical disengagement.
Like the other thing I'm just going to put in there, and I've spoken about drawing a line in the sand. It's also you've got to keep your use of force consistent, and it
Yeah,
needs to be across the police force. And I'll mention one like when we had our presence back when we first started in Catherine was far more. I wouldn't say, well, they don't like the word intimidating, but our presence meant a lot more back in the day. And that's because we kept our use of force consistent across the members. So I'll put one into context so people can understand what I'm talking about. Dingle and I, we were working in the commander's TAC team, and so we're in plain clothes. We're in an undercover car, and we've had a few new recruits, come into Catherine, and they were trying to apprehend one of our local Indigenous people that's quite regular. And this guy continually likes to fight police. He's not much of a fighter, but he can put up a fight. And look, taking nothing away from the young Connies who were in uniform that tried to apprehend this guy, but we got a call on the radio about backup. And we were the closest unit. We were in plain clothes, undercover. Oh, not an undercover car, but a unmarked car. And we rocked up, and the two Connies, and they're standing around, and they're doing their what is it, 5 to 2, or 10 to 2? What is it, 5 to 2?
10 to 2, yeah.
10 to 2, sorry. And and they got their hands up in the defensive thing. They're doing everything right as they're trained. And old mate's just sitting there with his fists up, wanting to fight him and all that sort of thing. The thing about it, Dingle and I got out of the car. We didn't move towards him, and we called out to him. And anyway, he turned around to face us, and we said, "Get in the cage." And he kind of, still shaped up to us, and we said, "You know what's going to happen if you don't." Anyway, he hopped into the cage, and they closed it. And the two Connies came over and they said, "How the hell did you do that?" I said, well, he's tried to take us on. He's taken a swing and hit one of us before, and we've upended him and put him straight into the ground, so he knows it hurts.
Mm,
Like that's just how that's completely authorized how we used our force in that situation. But he knows that that's how we're going to handle the situation. If he takes a swing at us, he's going to get ground stabilized, and it won't be pleasant.
yeah.
So, and what are your thoughts there, mate?
Yeah, that's. I mean, that's really important. There needs to be that. There needs to be decisive action. You don't let the offender get the upper edge. So if you can't do anything, you're better off getting right out of there and keeping eyes on or something like that. That's that disengagement. Disengagement means exactly that. Completely disengage,
Yep.
because there's no point letting them gain confidence. I'll give an example, and I'm not going to mention the members, and I'm not going to, I'm not. I wasn't there, so but I have been in this situation a lot of times. There was a situation in Alice Springs where I think it was a shift sergeant and a very junior constable had turned up to one of the camps in Alice, which I mean they're all pretty rough, but there's a couple that are a bit notorious. They've turned up to one of the camps and they were there to apprehend. A drunken woman had a fairly young woman had called in saying that her husband was beating her up or whatever it was. The members attended and they still had this confirmation bias in their head that they were dealing with a victim who had called police because she's being assaulted. They started speaking to people because she was carrying on like a pork chop. She's drunk and everyone else was relatively calm, but they're not great places, especially late at night. Lots of alcohol, very violent. We know what they're like. A number of the other people, including an older man, had said, "You need to take her away. She's a drunken menace. No one's assaulted her. She's just angry with us, and she's angry with her husband, who's completely sober, and she wants him arrested." But he said he hasn't done anything. And it's like she's the drunken idiot who needs to go. And they were indecisive. They just hung around and kept talking and tried to reason. And then what happened was the old elder said, "Just effing lock her up." And they've turned around to him and basically apprehended him. And then what's happened then is that everyone else has sort of stood up and not violently, but they've intervened and gone, "No, no, don't take him, take her. Like what do you leave?" Don't, they're yelling and screaming. So it's an intimidating scene. But I mean, the answer was right. We've got. Can I get your name? Can I get your name? You've said that nothing's happened here. I'll speak to the husband. Speak to her. Right. We'll interview. She's carrying on like a pork chop. Bang. She's gone. She's apprehended. She's disorderly. She's in the public place of the Aboriginal community. She's highly intoxicated. So at the lowest level, she can be apprehended for protective custody. That was the
Yep.
answer. Get her in the bin and get her out of there. If something's taken place that night, you can investigate that the next morning. The fact is, the husband's sober. He's going. She's been the one into me. Like this is all happening, and then it's obviously there's complexities. There's nothing simple, but the answer there would be everyone else is telling you this has occurred, so therefore it would make sense. And what you're witnessing would be there. The confirmation bias in their mind was she's a DV victim and we must investigate this to the point where we can apprehend the husband because that's what she told us. Well, what she said on the phone was probably bullshit.
Yep.
So that's where that came in. But the trouble was now they've apprehended this old fella who was a non-drinking elder in the community who just got frustrated with their indecision and snapped out at them. They apprehended him, and there was the crowd reaction to that, going, "No, you've got the wrong bloke. You've got the wrong person. Let him go and lock her up."
Yep.
Anyway, they've then been indecisive and they've released him as well. Well, what was happening was there was a few bad boys in the background who've moved away when the police came in because they got warrants. They're probably drinking on bail when they're not allowed to drink. So you've got your bad boys in the background and they've moved away because they don't want to get locked up. But they've realised they've got a soft target here. That indecision got to the point where we can take these guys on. Let's go and beat the cops up. So about 4 or 5 offenders actually emerged from the shadows armed with tire irons and rocks and God knows what, and actually isolated them from their car, threw rocks at the car, damaged the car badly, and then came out and tried to attack the police with weapons. And with the junior member, female junior member, actually, she ducked her head just as a tire iron swung across the top of her head. It actually hit the bun on top of her head. Her hair was tied up on a bun directly on top of her head. And the tire iron hit that bun and actually released her bun so that hair all came out. But I mean, the fact that she ducked her head was extremely lucky, so that the bar only hit a hair and not a skull. So anyway, they had to run. Those pair had to run out of there with tasers drawn and all the rest of it to get out and call for backup. Now, I'm not for in any way condoning the actions of the people, the offenders. Everything that happened there was the fault of the offenders. But the fact is that that's the uncontrollable element. The controllable element in that situation was the police officers who could react with decision, make the call, and apprehend the correct offender after having a brief investigation. If she sobers up the next day and goes, no, he hit me here and I know I was drunk last night and I was carrying on, that's fine. That can be investigated later. The immediate issue was her carrying on like a pork chop, and she was the one creating the problems, and she needed to be removed from the situation. It could have been resolved at that level, but it escalated to a situation that got referred up to criminal investigations for further follow up, and resulted in quite a few arrests for really serious offences, serious assault police, and things like that. So the situation escalated massively out of control because of a lack of decision, and it all comes back to that decisive, consistent. No, no, no. The police are all right. If you just play along, it's fine. If you start doing things like this, they're just going to do this, and you're going to lose. And that trains the regular population about how the police are going to respond.
Yeah, yeah, mate, that's exactly right. As a police officer, you have to control the situation, and like this is when you don't disengage. I mean, obviously they had to, but that situation was caused because they didn't control the situation to start with. And
Right.
look, I'm gonna put a bit of a point here. It's a story I thought about. I was off duty and I was traveling with my ex-wife now. This is before she was a police officer, and we're going down. I think it was Railway Terrace in Catherine. There, it was just after dark, and I've basically down past the BP, and I've seen this guy, and he's got a woman on the ground. He's just flogging her. Anyway, I turned to my ex-wife and I said, "Look, call the station now. Get in the cunt down here. Tell them it's me. I'm engaging." And I've gone out and I said, "Mate, you stand over there." As soon as he saw me get out, I've identified myself as a police officer, so we could call ourselves on duty. And I said, "You sit down there." But the problem was there was a lot of drunk people around at the time. And anyway, there was a couple that came out of the woodwork, and some of these they're Walbury, 6'4" giants, and they're coming out. But so the situation, it's not good. However, I controlled the situation just by giving firm demands of what they will do and how they're going to do it. And I would move towards them. I say, "You sit down over there. We've got police coming down." And look, it's a bit of a tactic because yes, I was well and truly outnumbered, but I controlled the situation. I showed that I had dominance over the situation, and I had to in that circumstance. And it's about controlling. It's about you make a decision, make firm decisions, draw a line in the sand. This is what you accept, and this is what you won't. It Look, it doesn't happen. It doesn't work all the time, but the more often you do it, usually the better outcome you'll have. It doesn't mean you have to go in and start throwing people around. All that was verbal commands. At the end of the day, when that person got arrested, we didn't have to use an ounce of force. But it was because the way, initially when I controlled the situation, then the other cops followed along. And
Yeah.
it's very important. I've seen a number of scenes where and look, a lot of junior officers I've rocked up, and their indecision can cause conflict. And look, in taking nothing away from them, the as soon as you rock up and basically start directing orders like grab that person, arrest that person, they're fine because the responsibility then falls on me as a senior officer.
Mm.
But and it's look, it's just training. It takes time in the job to learn how to justify and the powers you can use them. But you're given these powers, so don't be afraid to use them. You've just got to be able to justify everything that you do, and that's the trick. So
No, and I mean everything you're saying there. It's all about experience. Yeah.
yeah,
So we would have been indecisive when we first turned up. You imagine me and you
oh,
day one out of the college. Oh, what do we do? What do we do? But me and you
I
now to
remember
be.
rocking up when there was people drinking in public, and we're sitting there going, looking at each other, going, "What the hell are we doing here?"
Yeah. No. So it's just experience. You learn as you go, don't you? Same as any
Yeah,
job. It's just the way. But it's funny because we're going to lean slightly into the next thing we want to talk about, which is assaults on police.
yeah,
Um, and I think we can probably just carry on about it. people think, oh yeah, assault. How terrible is that? Oh my god, it is so common. It's not funny. It almost there's times where you don't even report them because it was just part of the rough and tumble, and you couldn't be bothered pushing it further. It's like, but there's other times, obviously, when it's very serious, and you do have to press forward. But mate, I was assaulted heaps of times, and mostly at really low end jobs.
Yep.
What you got any stories? Tell us about a time you were assaulted, Schultzy?
Well, mate, I've definitely had a couple. Like two that come to mind. I told you, I think, an early one when we were in the watch house, and that old lady. I don't know. She looked about 60 something, and she whispered something. I leaned in closer, and she punched me in the jaw. It wasn't hard and all that sort of thing. But yes, that assault. Yes, it is. Yes, she basically intended to punch me in the jaw. However, it didn't hurt. She's an old lady. There was no injury, so you let that slide because it honestly it's not worth doing the paperwork. However, some people might have some different views on that. The other one was another one where I told you about when I tasered that person, and I didn't get like my heart rate didn't raise up, and he was running at me with a tire and a screwdriver. Before that, he had thrown a milk crate at me, and I had to deflect it away, and I actually hurt my thumb a little bit because it hit the end of my thumb. And anyway, it's one of those things. They said, "Oh, you're going to charge him with assault." He was mentally ill.
Yeah.
He wasn't in control of his, I suppose, his mind. He had a long history of mental illness, and really, I mean, I had a bit of a sore thumb, but that was all right. I mean, it fixed up, and I know actually I'll give a shout out to Kylie Anderson. She suggested I put in an injury at work and all that sort of thing. I said, no, it's not worth it. Um, it's basically nothing. But he needed basically mental health assistance. So I didn't actually I didn't lay a charge against him. The other one that actually just came to mind would be their Christmas domestic, which we will tell you about one stage. And this was from a guy that was 6'2", just finished his Kapuka training, and I think he was about 21, 22 or something like that. He tried to king hit me, and I managed to move my head back far enough that it glanced off my forehead. Lucky I got a German skull. But that was a full-on assault. If I hadn't seen that coming, there's a potential it could have hit me fair in the temple, and I would have been knocked out and killed. He was a big guy, a lot bigger than I am, and but we'll talk about that one another time. That's a whole story in itself. But yes, we did charge him with assault. That could have been potentially bad. And yes, he did get done for assaulting a police officer.
The
But
shortest history and the shortest military career in history, I'd say.
yeah, well, it was funny actually. I think at the end of the day, the military forced him to plead guilty. They said, "No, you've stuffed up here." They looked at the evidence as well, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think he went much further after that. I don't really know
No, I
what
think
happened
that would have come
after
to a screaming halt.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, getting charged with assaulting a police officer. It's not
yeah.
good, is it?
No.
But yeah, mate. What about you? You'd had a
Oh,
couple.
there's heaps. Like there's lots, but like I said before, there were lots that came from nothing jobs. So I mean, one of the lower end ones that just shocked me because he bloody hit me well was, removal of alcohol is just such a mundane, constant job for the Northern Territory Police. It's a pretty. I know that obviously alcohol removal is involved everywhere in Australia, but in the Northern Territory and especially like Northern Queensland and Northern WA, a lot of those communities they're dry for a reason, and those communities have been designated as dry because of requests from the elders. The elders have asked that they make alcohol illegal out there, and that's because of the trouble it causes. So,
Yeah,
we were just rolling around Alice Springs, and we find a group just drinking wine, as they do every day, every single day in the Northern Territory. There's groups of people sitting around drinking wine, drinking alcohol in public. Anyway, this one particular, we just a couple of older people. It was an absolute nothing job. We come on, stand up. You can move that way. Give it that. We're tipping alcohol out. They didn't seem so drunk that they needed to go into custody, so there was no need for that. But this one old fella just stood up and walked away, and he had a bag with him, and I heard a dingle, a little like a tinkle as he walked away, like two bottles clacking together. So I've gone, hey, mate, just come over here. You need to show what's in your bag. And he ignored me and kept walking. And I walked over and said, oi, pull up. You need to stop. And I put my hand on his shoulder. And the mistake I made was I touched the shoulder that had the alcohol, had the bag in it with just a shopping bag with the alcohol in it. And he's pivoted on the spot. This is an old man with white hair. He would have been in his 60s or 70s. He's pivoted and given me an absolutely perfect right hook straight to the face and with really close proximity. And he absolutely rocked me. And I mean, I got a head like a bloody motorbike helmet. So I was pretty lucky. I rocked back and I remember going, oh, shit, he got me. And he dropped the wine bottles and he shaped up and he's like, what are you going to do? And I just remember looking at him going, mate, and I pushed him over. And I remember just pushing him on his back. And he got up, and I'm pretty sure he picked up one of the bottles, and I thought he was going to try and hit me with that. So I hit him with a bit of spray just to take the fight out of him. And then we apprehended him, put him in the bag, and it was like it was at that point I realised I was bleeding. It cracked me in such a way that I had a bit of a cut on my nose, and bloody facial injuries bleed like nothing, as we know. So anyway, I'm bleeding all down my face. And there was 2 units with us. We were just rolling back through. So 4 coppers, 2 cars. I'm like, oh, geez, you're all right. You're all right. Have you been cut? And it's like, no, I don't think I'm. And then I realised I was bleeding. He's like, oh, whatever, old bastard. Anyway, so he got charged with assault police. And from memory, he went to prison for that, actually. He had an extensive history. So that was the reason he would have gone to jail. But, I cleaned it up and went back to, I just kept working. There was no big deal. It was, anyway, at the end of the night, it's a bit of a piss take. And like at the end of the night shifts, you shout the first beer because you got punched in the head by an old man. That was the way we dealt with it.
I think it was a carton back then, wasn't it, mate?
Oh, I can't remember. I think I just shouted the first. Well, yeah, we just buy a carton and help drink it, so that was no worries. But I've seen so many others where I've seen police officers very seriously assaulted. Actually, I've got another one where once again, not a major job. So we got a call to a man creating a disturbance in Tennant Creek this time out the front of a house, and anyway, he was just a drunk out the front and yelling and screaming. It was more of a domestic, but at this stage not violent. Just he was being very disorderly. He'd been locked out of the house, and there was a big group of people there. So it's not like there was a single victim there who was vulnerable to this person. There were other males around, and this particular bloke was just locked out of the house, and he's carrying on out the front. And just before I turned up, so I'd been dispatched to the job. I was the shift sergeant, and my other crews were tied up. And I said, I'll roll by and just see what this is, and we'll go from there. And anyway, I rolled up to the job, and he's out the front, but he's just in the time that between when I've been dispatched and when I've arrived, he'd punched out all the windows of the Commodore parked out the front, and he'd cut his fists up quite badly. So he had bloodied lumps of fist, just dripping blood, not seriously bleeding, but covered in blood. Anyway, I've turned up and I've walked over and gone, "Oi, what's going on with you?" And he's just turned and come straight at me and just started throwing these fists straight at me. And I remember thinking, I'm not worried about him hitting me because he was too drunk to really connect. But in the light of the house and the fact I had my torch on him as well, I could see all this blood. And I didn't want any of that blood anywhere near me. So I became Muhammad Ali in avoiding his fists because I just didn't want to get all that blood on me. Anyway, I remember he lined one up, and I had a big old mag light back then. And anyway, he's lined one up, and I remember hitting him in the fist as hard as I could with this mag light, and it crumpled his fist. It was a decent hit, and he sort of just dropped that hand and kept fighting. And I remember it was the only ever time I've done it. I delivered a straight kick, the old straight kick that we were taught in the college that no one ever used much. I just gave him one of them right just above just right in the guts, basically, as hard as I could, and it launched him backwards. And that was the end of that. The fight was taken right out of him. And he was on the ground then, and he was no good. And in the meantime, I'd called it in, and I think someone else had called 000 because they said another job came through, police in danger, basically. So another unit had been driving back from nearby, and they had someone in the back for a statement, and they'd pulled in to help me. And we apprehended him, and that was the end of that. But I thought I'd avoided the blood. And this was, I think we'd just gone into the Navy uniform, so it wasn't as obvious. You used to be able to see blood on the old khaki uniforms really obviously, but I was covered in little driplets of blood. His blood was all over me, and it was gross. There's nothing worse than having other people's blood all over you.
No.
I remember I went back and I went into the watch house. There's a big decontamination for pepper spray at every watch house, every cells in the territory. And I went in there and I just absolutely dunked myself in this water and just hosed it all off. But that was one. I mean, oh my God, mate, there were so many. There were heaps. One of my favourite was not actually me. I was with a fella. So I was the sergeant in City Safe, and this particular senior constable was like my right hand man, sort of thing. And he would quite often be the lead contact, and I'd stand back and supervise the whole issue. And we apprehended a fella we'd both worked in Tennant Creek previously, and now we're in Darwin. So this is some years down the track from the previous story. And we'd apprehended a well-known scumbag from Tennant Creek, and he was just carrying on, but he wasn't quite pushing it to that level. And anyway, we put him in the back of the cage and we pushed him in a bit, and he's given us lip. So we're just been a bit of cheek backs, probably not the greatest professionalism, but we're just giving a bit of lip back because we knew each other. We knew he was, what do you get out of Tennant Creek? Did you? Giving us lip. And anyway, my the bloke, my offsider's leaned in. I've got the cage door in my hand, and my offsider sort of leaned in to hear what he had to say. He spoke really quietly, and as he leaned into the cage, this offender's hit him with a really sharp, fast right strike to the face, and got him a beauty and split his eye, split his lip, I think, and made his
Yep.
nose bleed. And then tried to come forward and hit him again, and I slammed the cage into him and kicked him back inside the car, and that was the end of that. But anyway, he's just gone, you get that one for free, and just shut the cage. And I said, oh, well, we're going to do him for that. It's like, we can't, mate. The pubs are too busy. We need to be on the road. I can't be back there doing a file. He can go for the disorderly we got him for, and that'll do. And he's just gone, no, we'll give him that one for free. He knows he got away with it. And when we got him to the watch house, he was very respectful. He got out of the cage and we're like, righto, walk. And he's like, yeah, righto. I think he thought we were going to beat him up, but there's no chance that was going to happen. But we walked him back inside, and he just went inside, got his ticket, and that was the end of that.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but it was a bit of a testament to the strength of that, the character of that copper. He said, no, you get that one for free. So he sacrificed his own, he copped a decent punch in the face, and he just went, no, we'll be right. And he basically sat in the car with a tissue to his face, cleaning up the blood. And we just got back to the watch house. He cleaned it up, saw the nurse. She put a Band-Aid on it. He pulled that off because I can't go to the bloody pubs with a Band-Aid on my face. So anyway, we went back down. That was about 11 o'clock at night, and we knocked off at 6. So we kept going for another 7 hours after that, and he just, no issue, worked through it. So police absorb a lot of abuse that doesn't get reported, and
Yeah, but well, mate, that kind of goes on to we've spoken about resilience before, and you've just brought a memory back to me. There was a time where, I mean, some people sit there and think, oh no, police, they've got to basically give people cuddles. It doesn't work like that. And
no.
sometimes the police training, when you go through training, they specifically do the training because if you haven't copped a hit before, because you will, there's a high likelihood you will, and on numerous occasions, be hit. So you've got to be prepared. If you've never been punched before or hit before, and remember they used to put us in that suit, and they'd put us in the circle, and the whole squad would stand around and they would lay into you. But it was that inoculation into being in that situation and how you get yourself out of it, because the world is not kind when you're in those sort of circumstances. So
No.
you like it wasn't too bad for me. Like I said, I grew up. I've been in more fights probably for my friends than I have for me, but all the way through my childhood, especially then going to Thursday Island. So, and I had been hit before. I've had a glass broken on my chin and a good, like, solid bloody Scotch glass, which gave me 14 stitches.
Still got the scar, mate.
I do still have the scar,
Yeah.
yes. And, and I won that fight. But that's just, but I was used to, so if somebody hit me, I knew how to handle it. I'd been hit before, so I knew how to handle it. But some people go into the police and they've never been hit, and that's a good thing.
And it might
But
even be that you mightn't even be punched in the face. It might be that there's just rough and tumble. At times, you will be wrestling someone on the ground. There will be impact. There will be body contact. I think I played a hell of a lot of rugby as a young fella, and that set me in good stead because you know that you can take impact and continue on. You don't quit because you've had a bump.
yeah,
Plenty of times in those big wrestles, there was all kinds of impacts happening, and you sort of brush it off and just get your job done. Who's got time to go back and analyse who hit who at where, but in a big all-in brawl? It's just like these people are under arrest for this. It's done. And
yeah,
arresting them was rough and tumble. There was impact. There was, there were probably assaults against me and against my other members and against other people on the ground. It's a chaotic situation, but it just comes back. I love that word, resilience. It's the right. We've had a bit of a blue, but we're good. We're still right. We're still the police. We're still going to win. We've got this team rolling, and we're right.
Yep,
I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying it's reality. It's a contact sport at times. The old policing,
it is.
a lot of the time, and especially that absolute front end, general duties and city safe, and in other jurisdictions they've got. I know Queensland's got tactical investigation units and um, everywhere. Little like quasi teams that go around and deal with semi-escalated situations. Not so much at the highest end. Critical incidents are actually very well contained and very well controlled because the level of force potentially is lethal. So we're not playing in that realm at this point, but we're just talking about the rough and tumble of daily policing, especially around those entertainment precincts and dealing with domestics. Like there's rough and tumble, and the Northern Territory has a hell of a lot of it.
Yep.
There's a lot of rough and tumble in the job.
Yeah, exactly. And mate, I will mention something here that I know, and I believe it's still the case. But I think Northern Territory is actually the only police force that doesn't allow cops to be victims of crime, so they don't get actually payout. And I know it does happen in Queensland because I know a few Queensland cops, and look, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, they actually get paid if they get assaulted while they're on the job. They are acceptable for victims of crime monies. And look, just to put that out there for anybody that doesn't understand, every time somebody gets an infringement every time somebody gets convicted in court, there is a fee that they have to pay, which goes into the victims of crime levy. So that's for anybody that's actually a victim of crime. So, you might get somebody. I had a case where one of the victims, she actually lost an eye and had to get a glass eye. And I think she got a payout of a considerable amount of money, like tens of thousands of dollars. I think, I can't remember the exact total, but there also, what you also got, and look, this is a whole nother story. When I was working the family and domestic violence unit, I used to get people reporting to be victims of crime when they weren't because they wanted to get the money.
Yeah,
So
that's true too. Yeah,
yeah,
actually,
so
probably a good thing that police can't get it up there, mate, because I could have paid off a couple of houses probably. And not just me. There were plenty. Oh my God. I'm thinking it not just forget my personal ones, the number I've responded to where other members have been assaulted.
yeah.
I mean, we're at 52 minutes. I can't go for 2 hours, but bloody hell.
Well, we could, mate, but we won't.
Oh yeah. No, it's probably a good thing. But that it's funny, we laugh about it, but I don't know, mate. All this shit builds up. I don't look back. My little demons that I have don't come from assaults and stuff like that. It would be different if it was a imminent or lethal threat or something like that. That would play on my mind, I think. And I can only speak for myself. I don't ever have flashback. I've been assaulted plenty of times. I don't ever look back at that and have issues relating to that. My issues come from extreme trauma to other people. So
Yeah.
extreme dead bodies and dealing with death and stuff. That's where I get mine. But
Oh, I
yeah, I mean that.
100% agree, mate. I am exactly the same. Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, a lot of that was funny. And the thing is, you're in a team, the teams experience the same thing. So you've got that shared experience, and the team really pulls you out of it. So, I mean, we're just talking about the same stuff. It's all teamwork, it's all that. The crew, you gain respect when you can be resilient after something like that. If you can still come back from a little assault, like my mate who got punched in the face and just went, nah, we'll be right, and just went straight back into it. I mean, he already had a lot of credibility, but that straight away I was like, oh, he's still tough as old boots, his bastard.
Yeah.
But you know,
And
he was
yeah,
just so
I mean,
good.
yeah, you have to be tough as a police officer. It's just look, yeah, the the world's not a kind place when you're in some of those situations. So you've
No,
just got to be tough. But mate, I'm just going to give out so anybody listening, especially cops or anybody. So there's two things I'd like if you can get in contact with us, and usually the socials through our Two Ordinary Cops Facebook page is usually the most common. But yeah, like the tourniquets. Get in contact with us. What your thoughts are about that? Because it's good to hear from what other people have to say about it as well. And the other one is probably assaulting a police officer. So, and I imagine everybody's, there's every cop would have a story, or if not hundreds. But yeah, just get in contact with us and let us know.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Absolutely. Well, that'll probably do us, mate. What do you think?
I think so, mate. Yeah, I think we've almost done our dash. So, but thanks for everybody for listening, and yeah, we'll see you all again next week.
Well, indeed. All the best.